Hi there, science fans! Welcome to another exciting journey into the world of science. Have you ever stopped to think about what stuff is made of? It's a fascinating question, isn't it? Everything around us, from your shoes to your toys to even you and me, is made up of matter. Yes, that's right, matter is the building block of everything we see and touch. Matter is anything that takes up space and has weight. This means that if you can weigh it and it occupies space, it's matter. That means your pet goldfish, a raindrop, and even the air we breathe are all examples of matter. Cool, huh? It's amazing to think that even the invisible air around us is made of tiny particles of matter. Think about it. You can touch your toys, feel the rain, and even feel the air if you wave your hand fast enough. This is because all these things are made of matter, and matter interacts with our senses in different ways. That's because they're all made of matter, and matter takes up space. Whether it's a tiny grain of sand or a huge mountain, if it occupies space, it's matter. Now here's a question: can we make more matter or make it disappear completely? This is a fundamental question in science that has intrigued scientists for centuries. The answer might surprise you. According to the law of conservation of mass, matter cannot be created or destroyed in an isolated system. It can only change forms. So while we can't make matter from nothing or make it vanish into thin air, we can transform it into different states and shapes. Isn't that mind-blowing? For example, when ice melts, it turns into water, and when water boils, it becomes steam. These are all different forms of matter-changing states. So next time you see something change, remember it's still matter, just in a different form. Keep exploring and stay curious, science fans. There's always more to discover about the incredible world of matter around us. Here's a secret about matter: it can't be created or destroyed. That's right, the total amount of matter in the universe stays the same, even if it changes form. Think about it. When ice melts, it turns into water, and when water evaporates, it becomes vapor. The ice, water, and vapor are all different forms of the same matter. We call this the law of conservation of matter. This fundamental principle is a cornerstone of science, helping us understand how the world works at a basic level. It's like a magic trick, but instead of disappearing, matter just transforms. Imagine a magician who can change a coin into a flower. The coin doesn't vanish, it just takes on a new form. Imagine you have a big block of Lego bricks. These bricks are like the building blocks of matter. You can build a spaceship piece by piece using those same Lego bricks. Then you can take it apart and build a robot. The bricks are the same, but the creation is different. The Lego bricks change shape and form, but you still have the same number of bricks, right? This is a perfect analogy for the law of conservation of matter. That's kind of like what happens with matter. Whether it's in the form of a solid, liquid, or gas, the total amount of matter remains constant. It might look different, but the total amount never really goes away. For example, when an ice sculpture melts, it turns into water, but the amount of water is equal to the amount of ice that was there before. Let's do some experiments to see this in action. By observing these transformations, we can better understand how matter behaves and appreciate the incredible consistency of the natural world. For this experiment, you'll need some soil, water, and a clear container. These simple materials will help us understand an important concept in science. First, pour some soil into the container. Notice the texture and color of the soil. Soil is made up of various particles, including minerals, organic matter, and even tiny organisms. Now, slowly add the water and watch what happens. As the water is added, it starts to interact with the soil particles. This interaction is fascinating because it shows how different substances can combine and affect each other. The soil and water seem to combine, right? It might look like the soil is dissolving, but that's not the case. The water is simply surrounding the soil particles, creating a mixture. It might look like you have less soil, but that's not quite true. The soil is still there, just distributed throughout the water. This is an example of a suspension where solid particles are dispersed in a liquid. The soil particles are still there, just spread out in the water. If you look closely, you can see the tiny particles floating around. This is because the water is holding them up, preventing them from settling immediately. To prove it, we can let the mixture sit for a while. What do you see? Over time, gravity will pull the soil particles down to the bottom of the container. The soil settles to the bottom. This process is called sedimentation. It shows that the soil particles are heavier than the water, so they eventually sink. This shows that even though the soil and water mixed together, they didn't disappear or turn into something else. the matter is conserved. This experiment demonstrates the principle of conservation of mass, which states that matter cannot be created or destroyed, only changed in form. Let's try another experiment. This time we'll need some oil, water, and another clear container. Carefully pour some water into the container, then add the oil. What happens? The oil and water don't mix, do they? The oil floats on top of the water, forming two separate layers. This is because oil and water are different types of matter and don't like to mix. Even though they form separate layers, the amount of oil and water hasn't changed. If we were to carefully separate them again, we'd see that we have the same amount of each as we did before. Again, the matter is conserved.